Welcome to the world of mystery, a place where landscapes still defy explanation, and the earth reveals stories older than memory. Tonight, our journey begins in Venezuela, a country shaped by extremes, where water falls from the sky, deserts touch the sea, and ancient worlds remain quietly alive. Angel Falls, Salto Angel. There are places on Earth that feel less like destinations and more like memories the planet refuses to forget. Angel Falls is one of them. Hidden deep within Canaima National Park, a vast wilderness protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This waterfall is not simply tall, it is overwhelming. Nearly 1,000 meters from summit to forest floor. 979 meters, with a free fall so long, the water spends more time in the air than it does on the ground. To understand that scale, you have to let go of numbers. 15 times taller than Niagara, 3 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. Even those comparisons fail, because nothing prepares you for what it feels like to stand beneath it. The journey begins quietly, high above the rainforest, where the Churun River moves slowly across the flat summit of Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo is not a mountain in the way we usually imagine one. It is a table of stone, a vast sandstone plateau, nearly 700 square kilometers wide. For millions of years, water has traced the same patient path across its surface, until suddenly, the land ends, gravity takes over, and something remarkable happens. The fall is so immense, that much of the water never arrives as water at all. Wind catches it mid-air, shreds it, scatters it. The river becomes mist, drifting through the rainforest like a moving cloud, softening the violence of the drop and spreading life far beyond the base of the falls. I remember approaching from the air, a small Cessna aircraft, slipping between layers of cloud. The gorge below us tightened. Devil's Canyon, they call it. Then the stone walls appeared, vertical, endless. In that moment, my chest tightened, not from fear, but from scale. This wasn't just a mountain. It felt like a fortress, something ancient, something built long before humans learned to name things. Later, the journey continued by river, a Curiara canoe, carved wood, guided by hands that know these waters intimately. The jungle closed in around us. Heat pressed against the skin. Sound thickened, insects, birds, the constant breath of the forest. Then the spray arrived. Cold, sudden, a fine mist drifting through the air, touching the skin like a quiet warning. When I finally stood at the base of Angel Falls, there was no sense of triumph, no feeling of arrival, only smallness. Here, you do not observe nature, you submit to it. The roar of water colliding with ancient stone drowns out thought itself. Worries lose their weight. Time loosens its grip. What remains is presence. A kind of purification, one that no camera can fully capture, no matter how advanced the lens. To the Pimon people, this waterfall has always had another name. Kerapakupai Meru, the waterfall of the deepest place. For them, the Tepui Mountains are not obstacles to be climbed, but sacred homes. They believe powerful spirits, the Mawari, dwell upon these summits, and so they do not climb them, not out of fear, but out of respect. That distinction matters, because reverence changes how we move through the world. More than 80% of Canaima National Park is formed from Tepui rock, stone over 2 billion years old. These formations were ancient, before forests learned to breathe, before animals walked on land, before the continents knew their current shapes. Standing here, you are not looking at scenery, you are looking at time, exposed. Access to Angel Falls is seasonal. Only when rivers rise, between June and December, does the journey become possible. Even then, nothing about this place feels guaranteed, and that may be the point. Angel Falls is not something you conquer. It is not something you collect. It is something you stand before. And long after the sound of falling water fades into silence, long after the mist settles back into forest, it remains with you as a reminder that the planet is older, stronger, and far more patient than we will ever be. Mount Roraima. There are mountains you approach with ambition, and others you approach with caution. Roraima belongs to the second kind. Rising above the surrounding rainforest, it is the highest peak of the Pakaraima Table mountain range, a massive stone plateau suspended between sky and forest. Its summit stretches across 31 square kilometers, sealed off by sheer vertical cliffs 400 meters high, like walls designed not to protect, but to separate worlds. This is not just a mountain, it is a boundary. Here, Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana quietly meet, without fences, without signs, only stone and silence marking the lines humans imagine. Geologists call Mount Roraima an island in the sky. For millions of years, its summit ecosystem has existed in isolation, cut off from the rainforest below, evolving on its own terms, untouched by the rhythms of the land beneath it. Time moves differently up there. The journey to reach it does not begin at the summit. It begins with endurance. 6 days of walking, 6 days of heat, mud, rain, and doubt. I remember the moment we crossed Paso de las Lágrimas, the Pass of Tears. Rain fell without pause. The ground gave way beneath each step. Muscles protested, breath shortened. And somewhere in that endless climb, I asked myself a familiar question. Why am I doing this? But that question did not survive the summit. The instant I stepped onto the plateau, it dissolved. Because nothing prepares you for what waits above. The landscape does not resemble Earth as we know it. It feels unfinished, or perhaps too old to care about appearances. Dark stone, sculpted by wind and water, twisted into shapes that resist explanation. Valleys of white quartz, glittering briefly when sunlight breaks through the cloud cover, as if the ground itself is remembering light. And then there is life, quiet, minimal, precise. A tiny black frog, Oreophrynella quelchi. It cannot jump, it cannot swim. Instead, it tumbles, rolling away from danger, a survival strategy shaped by isolation. A living fossil, carried forward from the age of Gondwana, when continents had not yet decided where they belonged. Standing there, you begin to understand what isolation creates. Not weakness, but specialization. At Punto Triple, the exact point where 3 nations converge, I stopped moving. Not because I was tired, but because there was nowhere else to go. It felt like the edge of the world. At night, Mount Roraima becomes something else entirely. Silence deepens, wind slips through cracks in ancient stone. There are no engines, no electricity, no distant cities breathing behind the horizon. Only the sound of your own heartbeat, measured, slow, undeniably present. It is absolute solitude, and yet there is freedom in that isolation, the kind that arrives when nothing is demanding in your attention. In the mythology of the Paimon people, Roraima is not a mountain at all. It is the stump of a sacred tree, a tree that once bore every fruit, every vegetable, every form of nourishment known to humanity. When a god cut it down, the trunk became the mountain, and the fall triggered a great flood, reshaping the world. Myth. Yes. But myth often survives because it speaks truth in another language. Even today, nearly 35% of plant species found on Roraima's summit exist nowhere else on Earth. They are not rare because they are fragile. They are rare because they belong only here. The summit rises to 2,810 meters above sea level, high enough to change the air, high enough to change perspective. Mount Roraima is not a place you conquer. It is not a peak you collect. It is a threshold. You do not climb it, you enter it. And once you do, you begin to sense that the earth remembers things we have forgotten. And sometimes, in places like this, it whispers those memories back. Los Roques. After the thunder of Angel Falls, after the weight of stone and gravity, the journey arrives somewhere quieter. Here, the planet exhales. The Los Roques archipelago was established as a marine national park in 1972. Today, it protects more than 40 islands and over 250 coral reefs spread gently across the Caribbean Sea. But its true rarity lies beneath the surface. Los Roques is an atoll, a ring of coral islands formed slowly, patiently, around ancient underwater foundations. In the Atlantic Ocean, this kind of structure is almost unheard of. Here, the sea becomes architecture. From above, color replaces geography, pale turquoise, soft aquamarine, deep cobalt blue. Each shift reveals depth, coral, sand, life beneath the surface. From the air, Los Roques does not look like land scattered across water. It looks like light, caught mid-movement. If Angel Falls speaks in thunder, Los Roques whispers. The moment I stepped off the small aircraft onto the runway of Gran Roque, time loosened its grip. There were no engines idling, no traffic, no vertical lines breaking the sky, only sand roads, painted houses, and the slow rhythm of the sea breathing nearby. Here, nothing rushes you. I spent an entire day on an unnamed Cayo, a small sand island, barely more than a curve of white against blue. No crowds, no schedules, just one umbrella, and an ocean that seemed to stretch forever. The sand surprised me. It wasn't sand as we usually imagine it. It was powdered coral, soft, cool. Even beneath the midday sun, it refused to burn. When I stepped into the water, warmth closed around my skin, and suddenly, the world changed scale. Fish appeared in color and motion, blue, yellow, silver. They moved effortlessly, weaving through coral fans that swayed with the current, as if the sea itself were breathing them into place. It felt less like swimming and more like drifting through a living gallery, one with no walls and no need for sound. As evening arrived, the light softened, the sea darkened, stars emerged. I sat by the shoreline, a simple meal of freshly prepared lobster beside me, salt still clinging to the air. And somewhere between the sound of small waves and the silence between them, a realization settled in. Happiness does not always announce itself. Sometimes it is nothing more than the steady breath of the ocean, heard clearly because nothing else is trying to speak. Life in Los Roques is shaped by restraint, traditional fishing, careful movement, respect for limits. The people here understand something easily forgotten elsewhere. Preservation is not a slogan, it is habit. You do not find plastic scattered along these beaches because it was never welcome here to begin with. The ecosystem reflects that care. 4 types of mangrove forests take root in shallow waters, their tangled systems protecting coastlines and nurturing life at its most fragile stages. Above them, the sky fills with travelers, dozens of migratory bird species moving between continents, pause here, resting in a place that still offers safety. The protected area spans more than 221,000 hectares, not as a boundary, but as a promise that this balance matters. Los Roques does not compete for your attention. It does not overwhelm. It does not demand. Instead, it invites you to slow down, to listen, to remember what the world feels like when nature is allowed to breathe freely. And once you accept that invitation, leaving becomes the hardest part. Morrocoy, after the stillness of open sea, after islands suspended in light, the journey shifts again. Here, land and water no longer know where one ends and the other begins. Morrocoy National Park stretches across more than 32,000 hectares along Venezuela's northwestern coast, a labyrinth of lagoons, winding channels, and low-lying cayos, resting just above the tide. What defines this place is not a single landmark, but connection. Mangroves rise from shallow water, their roots tangled and exposed, forming living architecture. Red mangroves, Rhizophora mangle, stand at the heart of this system, not as scenery, but as guardians. They are nurseries. Here, life begins quietly. Fish shelter among the roots. Juveniles grow strong enough to face open water. The The sea renews itself, one hidden channel at a time. Beneath the surface, coral reefs unfold in color and motion. Hundreds of tropical fish, sea turtles gliding slowly through warm currents. Above the waterline, another presence takes shape. Flamingos, scarlet against blue, reflected perfectly across the calm mirror of the Quere Lagoon. This wetland is so vital, so precisely balanced, that it has earned international recognition under the Ramsar Convention. A reminder that some places matter far beyond what we can see. If Los Roques felt distant and refined, Morrocoy feels personal, welcoming, alive. I remember drifting at dawn aboard a Peñero, a small wooden fishing boat, its motor quiet, its movement gentle, the mangrove channels closed around us. Roots twisted overhead, water glowed green beneath the hull. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, breaking into fragments, scattering across the surface like stained glass. It felt like moving through a living cathedral, one built not to impress, but to sustain. At Cayo Sombrero, the sea invited me closer. I slipped beneath the surface into shallow, clear water. A school of parrotfish passed slowly, their colors vivid, unbothered by my presence. There was no sound, except breath measured through a snorkel. No engines, no voices, only stillness. Morrocoy does not overwhelm you. It does not perform. It embraces. And when the sun begins to lower, the sky fills again. Thousands of seabirds return to roost, their silhouettes crossing the horizon, darkening the air in waves. In that moment, scale becomes clear. Humans are not separate here. We are not dominant. We are a thread, woven into something far larger, far older. Life beyond the park carries the same rhythm. In coastal towns like Tucacas and Chichiriviche, the sea defines culture and flavor. Fishing is not industry, it is heritage. One dish appears again and again. Vuelve a la vida. Seafood marinated in citrus, fresh, bright, restorative. Its name means return to life, a phrase that feels less like exaggeration and more like truth. By the numbers, Morrocoy shelters more than 200 bird species, nearly 1/5 of all birds found in Venezuela. Nearby, the Quere Wildlife Refuge stands as one of South America's most important bird conservation areas, a final confirmation of what the eye already knows. Morrocoy does not need to shout to be powerful. Its message arrives quietly. On wings at sunset, in reflections across still water, in the understanding that we are guests, passing briefly through a world that has been practicing balance long before we arrived. Margarita Island. After mangroves and quiet lagoons, after places shaped more by water than by people, the journey reaches an island where movement never stops. Isla Margarita is the largest island in Venezuela, just over 1,000 square kilometers of land floating off the Caribbean coast in Nueva Esparta state. At first glance, it feels like a classic tropical escape. But Margarita has always been more than that. Its status as a duty-free zone transformed it into a commercial center, a place where trade, travel, and daily life overlap. An island that does not retreat from the world, but interacts with it. Geography tells part of the story. Margarita is not one landmass, but two. Two mountainous bodies, connected by a narrow strip of sand and mangroves, protected within La Restinga National Park. This natural bridge holds the island together and creates contrast. Dry hills, wet lagoons, open sea, sheltered channels, more than 50 beaches unfold along its coastline, each with its own rhythm. At Playa El Yaqui, the wind arrives with precision, steady, predictable, reliable. Shallow waters stretch outward, perfectly tuned for movement. Here, kite surfers and windsurfers skim across the surface, carried by trade winds that rarely fail. Just a short drive away, the mood changes. Playa El Agua opens wide and slow, golden sand, long rows of palm trees, swaying without urgency. The island shifts constantly, from energy to ease, from motion to rest. For me, Margarita is defined by contrast. In Porlamar, streets pulse with activity, shops glow late into the evening. The island's modern heartbeat is impossible to ignore. Then, there is silence. Castillo de Santa Rosa. Stone walls rising above the bay of La Asuncion, weathered by salt and history. Standing there, I imagine the sound of cannon fire, the smell of gunpowder, the tension of a coastline once under threat. Pirates, empires, resistance. This island did not simply receive history, it endured it. Some of the most intimate moments came far from walls and streets, drifting by boat through the mangrove lagoons of La Restinga. Movement slowed again. Water mirrored the sky. Roots reached downward, branching into shadow. The boatman spoke softly, with pride, about native birds, about tides, about change. His voice blended with water and wind, until it became part of the landscape itself. Here, I saw a different Venezuela, not defined by struggle, but by resilience. A place where difficulty transforms into rhythm. As evening falls, music begins to travel. Salsa spills onto the sand, not performed, shared. Joy here is not loud rebellion. It is quiet defiance. The spiritual heart of the island beats just as steadily. Devotion to Our Lady of the Valley, Virgen del Valle, shapes the calendar and the collective memory. Every September, thousands of pilgrims arrive. Footsteps replace waves. Candles replace stars. It becomes the largest religious gathering in eastern Venezuela, a reminder that belief, like wind, moves people forward. Playa El Yaqui continues to earn global recognition, ranked among the most wind-reliable locations on Earth. But the island's true distinction is harder to measure. Margarita is not defined by luxury alone, or by history. It is defined by motion. Wind crossing water, music crossing sand, people crossing generations, carrying memory forward. Day after day, sunlit, salt-touched, alive. Margarita does not ask you to choose between past and present. It lets them coexist. And somewhere between breeze and rhythm, you begin to understand that movement itself can be a form of belonging. Five places, a single country, revealed through water, stone, wind, and memory. From Angel Falls, where a river forgets the ground and becomes mist, to Mount Roraima, an island of time suspended above the forest. From the quiet turquoise breath of Los Roques, to the living labyrinth of mangroves in Moroccoy, and finally to Margarita Island, where wind, music, and history move together. Each landscape tells a different story, yet all speak the same language. That Venezuela is not defined by a single image, but by contrast, by resilience, by beauty that feels both welcoming and untamed. This is only the first half of the journey. If these places have stirred your curiosity, if their silence, their rhythm, or their mystery has stayed with you, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you can continue exploring the beautiful and deeply mysterious landmarks of Venezuela. The journey is far from over.